Hello, everybody. So I'm here at the park. Got a ranch, some horses over there. You know what I'm saying? So, how's everybody doing today? So, well, uh, we're here to talk about today more on the topics of how it relates to the mental health and online things like that. So, we're here having a discussion. Uh, the conversations again online are definitely you have them. You have private conversations, you have public conversations. So a lot of the things it depends on. You might say, why is everybody so offended, or why is everybody so hurt, or harmed by some things? But I don't know. It just depends on a lot of the things because you know internet is definitely a different tool now, different resource. But in terms of the mental health, it might affect your attachment styles. It might affect the way you see people in the real life. I guess hopefully not. But as it sits today, as it pertains to your life today, we'll look at your mind as something as a gateway to the world itself, different dimensions, different universes, and your situation. You might have a situation that is completely different from what people might be accustomed to, and might happen is if someone might end up saying something and might say, "Well, I didn't know." So that's the scenario, we're in. That's the dialogue we're having because a lot of the things, it's the thing is, I would say, because of the way things are working today, the systems today, it's sort of to trigger you. If you get triggered, you're going to be caused to wrath. So the more you're triggered, that's the way you can say, "Oh, I was triggered to do X, Y, and Z. Storm the Capitol, or attack Target or something like that." But it's the triggering. That's what the devil wants to use. Is how can you be triggered? So in these days, don't be triggered by what you see out there again, and be quick to forgive. And it's still the anger, still the wrath. But some of these scenarios you'll find again, it's just a trigger. So the reason why I'm smiling, it's good to be out here, fresh air. But uh, it's one of those things where you're looking today. It's covered also in fear. So anger, fear, hatred. Those are the tactics used by the enemy to sort of entrap your mind and feelings of despair. So even when sharing the word, there's nothing really to fear, I say, but to the fear of the spirit of the Lord, and the spirit of the fear of the Lord. That's what we call it. But those aren't really things that you need to be forced to do because those people aren't going to be afraid about what you know the Lord is going to do. They're more afraid when they're looking around and they're saying we're in a pandemic. We all should wear masks. Yeah, of course. Uh, you'll find that these events might happen. They might come. You'll test your faith. They might come up just because it's for another reason as well. So I never advertise anything, of course, but in terms of because you never know what could happen next year. Something could affect the world next year, but it won't, God forbid. So it's those things where you say, at this moment, who am I? Does this affect my life at the moment? Not letting the small stuff worry you, because again, it's just a buildup of years and years of stress, anger, hurt, pain. And this is not to say that people won't change, their ways, where they communicate, because it's all these are defense mechanisms. In some cases, they're to, in a way, it's to guide us into a better mental state. But in terms of a scenario where if a certain, you know, situation is causing discomfort, you leave the situations because those situations again, it all depends on sort of the intention of the situation. If it's not really serving your purpose or any purpose in your life, then you can leave that particular situation. Um, if it's like maybe again someone says something they don't mean, you might want to try to reconcile a relationship and say, you know, tell them how you feel, and hopefully they apologize. And if they don't apologize, then you leave them. But I mean, things psychological things like silent treatment. You have to look at some things like emotional abuse. Most people don't realize it, but they're doing a technique called emotional abuse. You don't do verbal abuse or physical abuse. You don't do any of those other types of abuse. Every time you hear the word abuse, you run away from it. Okay. But the emotional abuse again is another defense mechanism. So is this something to say that it's cause and effect in the how we treat each other? But for the most part, you're looking at the side effects of our society, and just have to say, we're not in a group think. We all have our individual perspectives to talk about, things that we enjoy, things that we are, like to laugh about, things like that. However, awareness of what's going on, you can ask somebody, because it's people don't really check in on people as much as the it's a situation where you say the mental health in a certain region is different. Let's say it might put something in the water, you know. Uh, there's a lot of other things we're talking about. Yes, I even said 5G, you know. But it's the things where you say in these scenarios where social distance again is of course required, but you also have to look at the fact that it's certain things are control tactics of what they've always been. But if you understand the consequences of your ability, I mean, not everybody's formed the same way. So here's what I mean. Even in these videos, and what this is about, your mental health, blah 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 blah, social media, things like that, is to think about this. If I was like a monkey, whatever I was, if I was a bird or a panda, if I jumped and I picked up a fish, I grabbed it out of the water. Now, I might save it from sharks, but it can't breathe outside of the water, so I have to leave that fish inside the water. If I took a bird, I grabbed it out of the sky. Now it might be saved by getting hit by like an airplane or something, but it won't be able to fly. I'd be constricting its wings. So some of you are just like that. You're in a different environment. You have to be like fish in the ocean, because that's sort of what helps you survive. So it might not be anatomically correct for my situation to be in your situation. So there are things that you do that might help you survive, you know. But I will say, because you might not be able to survive, spiritual warfare, if you confront the same problems, the same monsters, demons, whatever they are, in my situation. So that's the difference, is because now even in these videos, it's about the choice, your choice, what you want to fight, what you're willing to work for. But most people won't have to work for it. Some people just get it. They'll just think about it. Like, oh, I thought positively. I got it. So those are those things where you say, that's the mental health state. It's either you fight for it, or you can just get it. You don't have to work for it. I mean, it's one of those things where it was what a person could choose, and some things, certain traumas, they couldn't decide. They couldn't choose what they would face in their lives, even before they were born. They just happened. They were freak accidents. No one could have controlled what would happen from that state. No one could control what would happen. It wasn't your fault. It wasn't your fault. So there's another thing, with the psychology, just saying, it wasn't your fault, it wasn't my fault, whatever. Because these things, they're just freak accidents. They weren't really supposed to happen. So that's all I have to say about some of these events. It just caused an effect going awry. So this is another way to explain certain situations. Like, again, we're looking at certain traumas that might cause a psychological effect in people's futures, and based off their past. Of course, I can't just say let go of your past, because you have to solve some unfinished energies in your mind. And I would say again, we say give it to God, but for some of you it might sound too archaic or too understated if I say something like that. So the basis of your therapy, your self help, is to say that you know it's the things that you take care of about yourself. It's the self care, the sleeping, the drinking, the water. Uh, there's the those types of things. I think of sleep, water, and protein. Protein is also good for the brain as well. You saw me almost have died in some of these videos. I probably didn't have some chicken, some oatmeal. So all those things are like those are good for your health and things like that. Vegetables, things like that, fruits. But looking around out here today, strengthen your lungs. It's not just about wearing the mask to protect from the virus. I mean, we've gone like thousands of years without wearing masks. So, your ancestors, adapting physically, I think it's really about strengthening your lungs, getting exercise, getting the fresh air. And I think that, in these certain scenarios, the strengthening of the lungs and when you go to a certain, place, you wash your face, clean your nose, things like that. It's another thing as well. People are worried about these types of things, such as the virus. So again, fear, anxiety, other things of that nature, depression. Those are sometimes I say they're spiritual attacks, but often, you might have had somebody in your life when you were younger who's probably, making you feel more worried about certain situations. Getting certain triggers in your life. I think anxiety is one of those things where that's something that could be also trained anxiety. Certain people want to just shield you from certain things, and so they train you to fear certain people, certain situations, and this is like another defense protecting mechanism. But that's a good thing. I mean, look, your fears again had protected you in the childhood, but then when you become more grown, you're like, there's certain things you'll say intuitively. This is your intuition saying, maybe not. No, maybe not. So those are the protective measures that you have. You'll say what not to do, what not to write up for some of you. This is just a general video, just to say, like, a lot of the things we're saying, and some of the things where you take somebody, social, what is it? So again, with the empath and narcissist thing, going back to it. So the empath, which you'll find they're not really that great at the social situations, but they're actually very emotional. They're very emotionally in tune. So again, they can even make people feel things that they never knew they had. So those things where emotionally we're looking at all these things. They might get confused with the bipolar, but the empath is just that emotionally tuned people, and the super empath. There's all sorts of the things, There's a lot of other connections with the being, as well as you have to say it's a mental illness. You looked at the schizophrenia. That's not really, in some cases, a mental illness. That's a spiritual attack. They might be traveling to different dimensions. You're hearing voices in their head. That's something where it could be many other things. So something to consider. Again, for some of you, we're looking at those scenarios where just take some reflection, some self-reflection, because you might be the very thing you hate in life. So those are the things where you have to say, it is what it is. It is what it is. I mean, in certain cases where you have these relationships, and you might find out that, it's not that nobody's a good person. It's the fact that, everybody's just had to strive to be a better person. I definitely, I always smile, but it's the fact that one thing that Jesus would tell you is to be wise as serpents, harmless as doves. And also to say that, he knew that people were evil, like every single one of them. He's like, if you being evil know what gifts to give your children or whatever, then how much will your Father if you ask for the Holy Spirit? So those certain things, Holy Spirit guiding you to be good, things like that, you know. And it might seem like, again, I might be new to the scene this past few months, but before I made these videos on Facebook, I probably made like over 300 videos on YouTube. So I had a lot of practice. So it's one of those things where, it's what your assignment is, what you're being called to do, being called to lead. It's where you're supposed to go. It might not look like, again, what you think it is, but I keep saying that because, again, if it does look like what you think it's going to be, it's very possible. I feel like it's very possible it looks like what you think it's going to be. And I mean, when you know what you want and you state your claim on it, you'll get it. So those types of things that you're looking at, you're asking for things, again, that you may want or you may need. Those are those things that you say, you ask and it shall be given. Ask and it shall be given. So if you know what you want, those are those things where you just say, this is what I want, and then, yeah, it shall be given. So those are those things, unless you ask amiss, of course. Don't want to do that. So don't ask amiss. Different scenario. So for the most part, again, just the lesson for today is just the fact that, keep up with yourself, and because you don't know. It's just these attacks, mental attacks, spiritual attacks on you, your mind. So again, protect your space, your energy, things like that. For the most part, we'll discuss more even about limitations that I shared, because that is I think there's another one from Jeremiah. So those guys, Jeremiah, Isaiah, Ezekiel, Obadiah. Those are the scribes, the prophets that are really they're really powerful. So they're like deep into you're going to be punished now. They curse these people. So remember, blessings and cursings don't come from the same mouth, and for the most part, just keep praying for each other. And that's all I have to say. So yeah, peace.